give an update on where we're at with the Sabino investigation in terms of a timeline for completion, the components of the investigation, and some of the challenges that we're experiencing. Secondly, I've touched base with most of you, but I want to emphasize again the compliance measures that we've had to take with regard to ARS-241, which requires school districts to notify every single homeowner in its boundaries of schools that have been assigned the grade of a D or an F. Okay, so we'll talk about those. First, I'd like to brief everybody about the current investigation that is ongoing at Sabino High School with regard to the baseball program and its recent victory in the state championship game. At stake is our retention of the state championship, so we take the investigation extremely seriously. It is a three-pronged investigation. There are 3 charges that have been alleged, certainly not proven as the investigation is still ongoing. We are looking into allegations of the illegal participation of an ineligible player throughout the season on the part of the Sabino baseball program. The second allegation alleges the inappropriate use of funding with the Sabino baseball program. And then, of course, the third allegation is illegal recruitment practices on behalf of the coach and or the coaching staff. Those are the allegations that are currently under investigation. As we've communicated before, these allegations were originally brought to the attention of the Arizona Interscholastic Association, known as the AIA. The AIA, in good faith, informed us of these allegations and asked us to conduct our own internal investigation. That internal investigation, which is ongoing, we hope will conclude shortly, and we will be able to present our findings to the governing board. And then certainly after our governing board, we will be able to present our findings to the Arizona Interscholastic Association's executive board. A couple of items to note. Herman House is our director for interscholastic athletics. He also serves as the president of the Arizona Interscholastic Association's executive board. He will be recusing himself from having any hearing of this case once it is presented to the AIA. He will not be a part of the AIA's rendering of any decision with regard to either sanctions or our retention of the state championship for baseball. He will be recusing himself in his capacity as AIA president. Secondly, Herman House will be recusing himself from the portion of the investigation that involves the direct questioning and interviewing of Sabino's baseball coach. For largely professional reasons due to the supervisory relationship that exists between the district's athletic director and the head baseball coach at Sabino, he will be recusing himself from the portion of the investigation that deals with the direct questioning and interviewing of head baseball coach Chandler. The investigation itself is multifaceted. It consists of the interviewing of players and student athletes affiliated with the Sabino baseball program and students that were perhaps formerly a part of the Saguaro baseball program. The second component of the investigation deals with the interviewing of parents, largely the parents of the student athletes involved in the Sabino baseball program and perhaps formerly that were involved with the Saguaro baseball program. And then largely there's a direct interviewing and statements that are being collected from the coaching staff of the Sabino varsity baseball program. The Sabino administration has been wonderful. They've been accessible. They have been of great assistance in connecting our investigative team to these different stakeholders. The lead investigator on the part of Tucson Unified is Director for School Safety, Jeffrey Coleman. Jeffrey Coleman, in addition to his capacity as sort of the main contact person for school safety and security, is well-versed in employee investigations with regard to these types of allegations. Coach House, our district athletic director, Herman House, he is active in the portions of the investigation that focus on student athletes and that focus on parents. The investigation has hit some difficulties with regard to scheduling. It is summer, and it is hard to get parents in when they're on vacation. It's hard to get students that are out on vacation. That has largely caused some delays. We also have another delay with regard to students' comfort level, talking about their coach and communicating information that students feel may be detrimental to the performance of their coach. So that's another challenge that we see in this particular investigation. Because of these obstacles, largely because of the scheduling, we're looking at a timeline where an executive summary could be produced and findings could be presented probably by August 13th. I think the soonest that we can see this investigation wrapped up could even be the week of August 6th. So with that, I will take your questions on the Sabino issue before we move into the ARS 241.
Dr. Trujillo, how often does the district get complaints about recruiting or improper athletic department behavior during or after seasons?
Not very often. I can't speak to prior to my tenure, but this is the first one, certainly on my watch. Any other questions about the Sabino investigation? Okay. As I've stated to numerous press outlets, ARS-241 is a state statute that requires every school district to notify all homeowners and all residents that live inside of its zone of any schools in the district that receive the grade level of a D or an F. So what we saw in the last few weeks is all the residents of the Tucson Unified School District received postcards, whether or not they had children living or attending Tucson Unified Schools. They received postcards notifying them of all of the Tucson Unified Schools that were assigned the D or F rating for the 2017-2018 school year. So I want to clarify for this group, as I've done for the other media outlets that have spoken with me, letter grades for the Tucson Unified School District for the 2017-2018 school year, they were issued to the Tucson Unified School District in August of 2017. They were disembargoed and allowed to go public in August of 2017. In August of 2017, we did a board meeting. We facilitated a presentation at a board meeting where we publicly presented our district scores on a school-by-school basis. We made our school information, our letter grade information available to the press in August of 2017. In fact, the Arizona Daily Star did a story, KGUN did a story. It was not new information. In September of 2017, the Arizona Board of Education decided to deem all letter grades preliminary. So the letter grades that were assigned to us in August all of a sudden became not final, preliminary, not allowing us to proceed with compliance with Arizona Revised Statutes 241. So we couldn't issue any postcards because everything was deemed preliminary. The Arizona Board of Education did not come back and say that letter grades were final until May of 2018, like 2 months ago. So that triggered our compliance with ARS-241 for letter grades that were issued for the 17-18 school year. And they were issued largely, well, off of student performance on AZ merit for the 16-17 school year. So the letter grades that were issued for 17-18 were based off of student performance on the AZ merit exam in the spring of 2017, May of 2017. So it was largely a compliance piece. They do not note our letter grades for the 17-18 performance on AZ merit. Those letter grades are coming and will be assigned to Tucson Unified Schools for the 18-19 school year. We're awaiting those letter grades. The only thing that we have is our student performance levels on AZ merit. So with that, I'll take any questions on the postcards and the state statute that requires our notification. Mr. Stevenson?
So when does that statute require the notifications be sent?
I believe it's 30 to 45 days.
After,
Yes, after the letter grades are deemed final.
and when exactly were they deemed final?
The letter grades were deemed final in early May. I don't have the specific date.
So they should have gone out June, end of June?
Absolutely. The reason that we were late is that we believed that we had done enough already with Parent Link, which is the automated phone system, with public board meetings, with letters that were posted on the websites of all of the DNF schools. ADE came back and said that that was not sufficient for compliance, which forced us into a situation of complying with the statute's requirement that every single resident receive written notification at each residence, which is why we were late in terms of getting the postcard. It also generated an additional cost for us. We tried to do everything we could to work with ADE to say, look, we have communicated with our parents in a variety of formats at this point. Is it necessary that we now must mail something written to every individual residence? And that was the direction that we received from ADE, so we did have to end up late issuing the postcards because our internal compliance measures were not deemed compliant with the statute.
And my understanding is you have to send those to everyone living within the boundaries of a specific school that got a DRF, not everyone living within the district boundaries. Is that also your understanding?
The boundaries of the school.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And TUSD went beyond that and sent it to everyone within the boundaries of the district? Do I understand that?
I will have to follow up on that. Because we had 27 DNF schools, it's a pretty sizable chunk, okay, but whether or not we sent to every single person in the district, I'll follow up.
Okay. And so I've received 2 emails from people who live in Catalina Foothills who got the notification. How many were sent outside of the district? Have you guys done an analysis on that?
To my knowledge, we didn't send any postcards outside of the district. Errors happen. Mailing addresses are erroneous sometimes, or sometimes people move and they leave bad addresses, and we mistakenly send postcards to different addresses outside the zone. But we should not have communicated that information to anybody living outside of TUSD.
And how much did it cost to send out those postcards?
I believe we had a cost estimate. Leslie, were you familiar with that one?
Yeah, so between printing and postage, it was around I don't remember the exact number, but between $42,000 and $44,000.
Between $42,000 and $44,000.
And how many were sent?
I would want to double check that. It's a very large number.
Okay.
The funding source was M&O. We were not permitted to use any of our entitlement monies to fund that notification.
Okay.
So basically an unfunded mandate.
And along those lines, I think last time we were here, we were talking about AZ merit scores. That
Yes.
you're going to have like a further breakdown. I think you just had it kind of by grade level at that point, but we're hoping by now, and I think even the deadline to submit that information back to the state has passed. Do you have, broken down AZ merit scores?
We do. We have school level AZ merit scores that we want to get online. So we're still waiting for the disaggregated data that takes you into subgroup level and ethnic performance and individual student performance. That situation has not changed. We're still waiting for that from the state. But now we do have, in a district-to-district level, we will make available how individual schools did by grade level.
Okay.
So we are there, okay? As Mr. Stevenson noted, the deadline just passed, and we have complied with that deadline for Tucson Unified to submit all of its data to the state for the purpose of determining its CCRI points, College and Career Readiness Index points. So the information that we submitted was largely around AP and honors course participation, CTE programmatic participation, graduation rate related information, dual enrollment related information. All of these are very, very important data points that the state uses to assess College and Career Readiness Index points that go towards a school letter grade. We submitted special education programmatic performance information because for the elementary schools, the percentage of students that are in inclusive environments or that are in environments that would be deemed least restrictive, counts towards an elementary school's letter grade. So we were able to get all of that information together. Sometimes we can't send it all at once. The state does give us a little bit of a window, grace period, if you will, past the deadline to be able to get the information in.
So we'll get a copy of that?
We can. That's public information.
Okay.
I don't see where the barrier would be if our press was interested in saying what was Pueblo High School's CTE programmatic participation rate, how many AP courses we're running at Saguaro. I think that's perfectly public information.
Okay, I was actually more worried about the AT merit scores.
Oh, school level.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we want to do a website that everybody can just kind of centrally go and pull down whatever you want to pull down. So we'll make sure that that's available.
Okay, when do you expect that to be up?
I'd like to get that going by this week. I don't want to head into another board meeting where people don't have that information.
Okay, gotcha. And with the district moving to the ACT rather than the AC merit, that won't impact this year's 8th rep grades, but it seems like nobody understands how that's going to impact the way that 8th rep scores are calculated going forward. Have you received any information from the state, any kind of guidance as to what this move from AC merit to ACT will actually mean in terms of?
We haven't received any guidance at this point or direction on how the state is planning to measure growth when students take the ACT. We know internally what we need to do to facilitate the ACT, so that's not the issue. Our students are very comfortable taking the ACT. Our team is very well versed in the protocol. So in that sense, it's going to be an extremely easy transition. But how is growth going to be measured is to be determined by the Arizona Board of Education at this point.
Well, and even like cut scores on the ACT, right?
Yes.
Determines everything, essentially.
Essentially, what has to be determined by the Board of Ed is, with regard to the ACT, what range of cut scores are going to be determined as partially proficient, right? They're going to have to translate those cut scores into their current rating system for proficiency that they use for merit, which in Tucson Unified will now only be grades 3 through 8.
Relating back to the postcards you were talking about, when did you initially start to send those out? Sorry if I missed that.
Those postcards were initially in the last few weeks. So I want to say when we got back from,
Like the start of July that you said?
yeah, I think immediately after the break or right before our break for July 4th weekend.
Okay.
I think you mentioned in the past the district has a curriculum based on the AZ merit, and so now moving forward, what's the district doing to kind of prepare students for the ACT?
I think what needs to be emphasized is that AZ merit is very much in effect for grades 3 through 8. So a very large chunk of our curriculum does not change. We're talking about high school now and making sure that our internal assessments are aligned to the ACT so that the juniors are very, very prepared. We're going to have to make sure and go back in and do a curriculum audit and a review for 9th grade English language arts, algebra, geometry. Certainly the same thing has to happen at 10th to make sure that those are ACT aligned while still being aligned to state standards for Arizona college and career readiness. What we cannot do is abandon our current curriculum and align it 100% to the ACT. We are still responsible for compliance for the Arizona Department of Education's Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards. So it'll be a balancing act, and our curriculum department is going to have to be in charge of that. Make sure that's a facilitated process.
School's starting soon. What's your biggest worry heading into the next school year?
And what are you planning to do differently?
Hiring teachers. Hiring teachers is one, and enrollment is the other. So those are the two prioritized challenges that we have right now. And so what we're really doing differently with teachers is we moved to a central placement model where we have worked with our principals in terms of establishing a grace period for when a school has a vacancy and when we have identified applicants, giving those school leadership teams 5 days to get a teacher in and get them interviewed, and if not, we're bringing them in, we're interviewing, and we're placing. We realize that in the face of a teacher shortage, we can't leave things to chance anymore. We can't take a chance that a particular school is going to have a teacher application laying on a desk for 30 days, or that our HR associate's going to have teacher applicant information laying on a desk for 30 days. So moving the system to a very tight 5-day for contact with our teacher interviews and placement. We're doing a lot more central interviews up here and bringing teacher candidates up here and having principals interview teaching candidates up here at the central office, interviewing letters of intent on the spot, calling references on the spot, getting teachers placed. So that's really been our big focus area. I think with enrollment, we've seen some success with our enrollment satellite centers that have been running for the month of July, understanding that one of the challenges with enrollment is having our office managers off contract largely for the month of July, and so being able to utilize our family resource centers around the city and having enrollment teams inside of those centers allow customers and parents just on-the-spot access. If it's Duffy that's closest to them, they can go to Duffy. If it's the Southwest Center, they go there. If it's Palo Verde, they go there. If it's Wakefield, they're able to go there. So being able to go to these different family resource centers, walk up and enroll their kid in any one of our schools, I think has been a nice change in our protocol. Prior to that, during the month of July, everybody from every school had to come down to the district office, creating somewhat of a barrier to being able to get your child into school. So now having these access points around the city make it easier.
This is the first year for
It's first year that we've done that, absolutely. I think also with open enrollment, making that a more streamlined process and really understanding that the lotteries that we run for placement only apply to the 13 magnet schools that we have. And they only apply to a school that's what's called oversubscribed, meaning it's at capacity, and anybody that we now let in, we have to do off of a lottery system. But other than that, the rest of our schools, first come, first serve. We've done a classroom space analysis to make sure that schools have identified the appropriate number of open enrollment students that they're able to take. Some schools, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to do a campus space analysis with Santa Rita. We know Santa Rita's open for business, hundreds of seats available. So some schools are easier than others. Other schools to do a space analysis is trickier. CE Rose in the West is one of our most popular choices, so we have to always be very careful in terms of looking at the number of families that are going to be able to go in and getting out to the school, walking through it and saying, all right, CE Rose is already crowded. It may only have 20 seats available versus the Santa Rita where we probably don't have to do as much walking because we know that the situation that the campus is in with regard to enrollment.
You have 2 weeks till school starts. What are you trying to accomplish in those 2 weeks? What are the 3 things you're trying to get done?
The first thing that we're going to be doing is working with the principals and having some very tight systems and very well organized first days of school. We don't want any parents in any disorganized lines. We don't want any parents lacking information in terms of when they go to a school. A parent in a disorganized line, not willing to wait, walks across the street to the charter school. And there goes $5,000 in public funding that we could use for buses and band uniforms and salaries and benefits and computers for kids and Wi-Fi's and tablets. So we want to have a very, very tight system for opening school. So working with our principals to make sure that opening of school is a smashing success and that we have a focus on customer service. I think that's one. I think secondly, working with our campus teams to make sure that we have a team of people that immediately contacts any student, any family that does not show up for the first day. Funding is live for 10 days, meaning that students that we call that miss the first day and come back on day 3, day 4, or day 5, we're allowed to go all the way back to the first day to claim funding. So it's very important, and we can do that all the way up to day 9. Day 10, we cannot do that. So those first 10 days are crucial to get in touch with what are called no-show students. All those students that did not show up on the first day, we want very active campaigns, call teams, calling those kids to get them to school. Sometimes kids are on vacation, they're coming in late. We don't want to leave them on the table. I think that's big. we're working with our principals to do that. We're going to be talking about that largely coming up when we see the principals later this week. Some costs no money. It's an existing resource. It's a practice. We want to start engaging in practices that retain kids or get kids into our building. And then lastly, I think it's just parent notification with regard to the code of conduct. That's the third big thing. We're in a race to try to get done by the first day of school. The code of conduct is going to be a three-pronged communication and distribution campaign. What we're not going to do is print 50,000 copies of the thick book. All of you in this room know that the district is not in a financial situation to do that if we wanted to, okay? So we're going to do a three-pronged approach. Every school is going to be provided enough hard copies that will be available in the office for about 15% of its respective student body, okay? Our team is developing a mobile app in both English and Spanish that will be available on the website for any teacher, any employee, any parent, any student would be able to access it. It'll be compatible with any device, just like a mobile app that the user will be able to work with. And then we will also have searchable PDF in both English and Spanish that anybody can download at any time on all of our school web pages and on our district web page.
And are we thinking that'll be done by the first?
Yep. We're on target to do July 31st to have all of these resources available. We're working with our communications team on an informational video that will provide an overview of the code of conduct, its components, and then talk about what's new, and then talk about where to find it. And that how-to video, we will be facilitating it in English and Spanish so that all of our parents will be in the know. So that's the other, if you talk about the big three, that's a very big third thing that we're in a race to get done by July 31st.
Given the new amount of money coming down from the state following the teacher lockouts, how would you describe the rate of new applications and teacher staff retention this summer compared to the years past?
It's a lot better. We're sitting at 122 vacancies, and a year ago at this time we were like 165. So it's not, I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it. We have had several teachers that had stated an intention to separate from us in early May and rescinded the separations because of the new salaries that came forth. Several of those that were to our benefit in terms of what our governing board did. Our governing board's selected salary package effectively makes Tucson Unified one of the highest paid districts to work for K-12. So it's a very, very good outcome. I think that had something to do with us being in a better spot with teacher vacancies at this particular point. My goal for teacher vacancies is to be able to stand in front of you the first media briefing the first week of school to say, we officially have fewer than one vacancy per school. That magic number is 88. We have 89 schools. It would be a huge victory in the campaign against the teacher shortage to address the teacher shortage issue, to be able to stand up here in a few weeks and say, okay, we've got 80 vacancies or we've got 85. Ideally, you want 0, right? But given where we've come from and the progress that we're showing, I would love to be able to make that statement. We're not able to make that now, obviously, at 122 vacancies, but we're working very hard over the next 3 weeks to see how many of those vacancies we can get filled.
Is there a number that you use to classify TUSD as unemployment? You know, like in the unemployment sector, you call 4.5% full employment. Does TUSD have a figure they're going for, or an acceptable range of vacancies?
I think for us, in an acceptable range of vacancies, I think anytime you get into the territory of fewer than one vacancy per school, you're in pretty decent shape. I do think that when you start to get down around 30 or 40 vacancies, you're in exceptional shape. For a district this size, I mean, that would absolutely be phenomenal. I think as long as you're hovering around 100, it's still problematic, very problematic. So our destination is to get the numbers down to under 100, if not fewer than one vacancy per school. Then it starts to become it becomes easier to navigate, because when you're in that particular situation, it's easier to go get those long-term subs. Your long-term sub usage costs are driven down. You're not spending as much on daily and long-term coverage, and now you have a little bit more funding available to use in other areas.
To
No, they're pure teaching positions, so they include exceptional education and the other, anything that would be considered teaching.
In terms of support staff, have you seen a decrease in retention from this past year to the upcoming year?
We've always struggled with bus drivers, and bus drivers are the #1 struggle right now. We're hoping that the rate analysis that we did and the additional dollar that we've afforded them in their salary will help us with retention. It's hard to recruit, it's hard to retain bus drivers, and that's our focus right now. We have close to 270 routes already ready to go for the first day of school. It's making sure that they're fully staffed and that we're keeping. Our bus driver turnover rate has always been a challenge, so I can't say that it's any worse this year than it was last year. Last year was pretty challenging as well.
What do you think the difficulty is for that turnover rate? Like, what creates that issue?
I think in addition to the already low salary, I think the out-of-pocket costs that they have to bear up front for their CDL, for their testing, for various other pre-employment issues that they have to go get done, I don't think that that helps the situation. I think the structure of their contract, where there's several months of the year that they're not working, that they're 9-month employees, and if they don't get drawn to work on one of our summer deep clean crews, which keeps them employed to the summer, it's incredibly hard to keep them from looking for another job. So I think there's just some factors that we're going to have to address to make bus driving in TUSD a very attractive permanent employment solution.
And then in terms of the new budget passing, is there any sort of paperwork or PDF you're going to be sending out to parents so that they have a copy of that they've been sent, or is it just something that you'll tell them to access on the website?
Are you talking about the budget itself for the school district?
Yeah.
So there's the budget book that anybody can access. I'm not sure there's a way that we're going to try. How you take that massive budget book and boil it down for John Q. Public, I think is a constant conversation so that they just have the quick kind of like talking points. Maybe looking at what's new in the budget. I think maybe an executive overview of what is the new budget feature might be something that we are looking at. We also are continuing to work on our budget. Our governing board has provided some direction that's going to require us to go back in and look for some additional cost savings. That way, through our expenditure plan, which is the management of the district's money, we will be, of course, coming back, and that will be in full view of the public. Any modifications to our spending plan when we make cuts due to additional direction given by the board, it's always presented publicly as part of our budget expenditure updates every single month.
Given that, are you any closer to setting a final rate, maybe you already have on that secondary property tax for the DCA?
Our governing board will be making a decision. We'll be discussing the matter at the July 24th meeting in terms of what their next steps are with the recent decision by the County Board of Supervisors to not levy the tax.
What's your thought on that?
You know, I don't want to jump out ahead of our board on that, but our board has a couple of different options. It can choose legal action against the county, and what that will do, if our board chooses to go that direction, it will certainly fast-track this issue to state court level, if not spark an AG's opinion sooner rather than later. Our board can choose not to take any legal action. Our board can choose to seek an AG's opinion on its own, independently. Unfortunately, that avenue leaves it wide open to when an AG's opinion would be issued. I think with pending legal action against the county for not levying the tax, that's certainly the avenue that probably would spark a legal result sooner than later.
So given that decisions are forthcoming, does it change how you operate the district in the meantime or plan?
No, we're talking about around $17 million, between $16 and $17 million in what would be the excess 1%. And the way that our DSEG budget is set up, it's a $63 million budget. That $17 million, we're going to need it probably by December. So we've got in our DSEG, the portion of our DSEG money that's going to be allotted to us, we have operating funds. We have money to operate our desegregation programming through our magnets and our ALE and all that stuff that we fund, the transportation. we're going to be okay for the first quarter and probably deep into the second quarter. If the matter is not resolved as we get closer to Christmas break, we're going to start having some very structured conversations with the desegregation plaintiff parties, with the special master, collaboratively to figure out how we're going to go forward if we're staring down a $16-17 million gap still with no result and no resolution heading into Christmas break.
You mentioned doing like an app and not, I guess, printing 15% of the GSRR booklets that you normally. Like, how much do you expect to save off of not printing the full 50,000, including like the cost of developing an app and stuff?
You know, right off the bat, if you're looking at a total printing cost, number one, the app won't cost us nothing. We're using existing IT staff and communications. The video production will cost us nothing. We're using existing media. Of course, it costs us nothing to post on the existing resource of the school web pages. To print 50,000 copies, we're certainly looking at several $100,000. To avoid that cost, we're looking at printing 10,000 copies as opposed to 50,000 copies, which would translate into roughly 15% of a total of a respective school student body. We will have roughly about 1,000 copies available for administrators at large to hand out upon request. I think we're significantly going to be able to keep that cost significantly low. My target is to be lower than $100,000 total on printing versus the several $100,000 that would be for the books.
Like several, do you know how much?
Well, I can gauge. We don't know how much, but I do have a gauge. I do know for a fact that Eureka Math, which is the math textbook, okay, that we use for the Eureka Math product, that's our approved curricular resource for math instruction, to be able to provide a hardbound similar to what would the GSRR or the Code of Conduct would look like for every single student in the district, that expenditure is going to be clocking in at just under $800,000. Okay, so I'm using, yeah, I'm using, and that's a hard figure we already have because it's our math textbook. So that's what we're going to go with, and it's roughly about the same length of the GSRR, a little bit higher quality because it's bound, but that's clocking in at just under $800,000. So
Easily $500,000 savings?
Easily $500,000 savings by not printing 45,000, if not 50,000 copies of the GSRR.
And then earlier you were mentioning numbers about the vacancies. I got some numbers a couple of weeks ago, but I asked for the wrong information. I was going to resubmit my request, but I'm wondering the numbers you provided, are those as of today and 1 year ago today? Are you sure about those numbers?
The numbers I provided are as of today, and we just had a job fair, a small one, and so we want to let HR update the website and take off the postings that we've hired for. And we will get you some hard numbers about where we stood with teacher vacancies a year ago.
Okay. I'll resubmit the request. I just didn't know if I should quote those numbers or just ask officially for the exact.
I think the exact is always the way to go. Pretty confident, though, that we were in the mid-60s, but we will get that information out. All right, thank you, everybody. Yes.
All right, I'm stealing this.
Yes. Can you release them? Yeah, yeah. $44,000. It's a teacher. Everybody have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.